She wed him to save her people, then saw him fight with incredible power. Best HFY stories. The sun was setting over the red canyons of Sindril, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. Dust swirled across the small settlement of Redspire, where Mara walked among the scattered huts, her boots crunching on the dry ground. The colony had always been quiet, peaceful even, but lately there had been whispers of danger. A new corporate overlord who claimed the planet as his own. Mara, as the leader of her people, carried the weight of their survival on her shoulders. She paused at the edge of the plateau, looking out at the horizon, where the twin moons were beginning to rise. The wind tugged at her cloak, and she felt a chill she didn't fully understand. The people needed her to act, and she had made a difficult choice. The solution wasn't an easy one. She was to marry Kale, a stranger who had arrived on Sindril months ago. He was known across the frontier planets as a wanderer, someone who could do things people said were impossible. Some whispered he could bend energy to his will, move faster than the eye could follow, and protect without fighting. Mara had only seen glimpses of his abilities, enough to leave her both awed and uncertain. Yet it wasn't Kale she had to think about. It was the colony. Marrying him wasn't a choice for love. It was a choice for survival. The small square in Redspire had been prepared for the ceremony. Holographic lights flickered along the edges of the plaza, casting soft blue and gold glows over the gathering of villagers. Children peeked from behind barrels, their eyes wide with curiosity, while the elders watched with quiet concern. Mara felt their gaze like a weight on her back, reminding her of the responsibility she carried. And then she saw him. Kale rode in on a hover bike that left a faint trail of sparkling dust behind. His movements were calm and measured, yet every eye in the plaza seemed to follow him as though drawn by invisible strings. He dismounted without a word, his dark coat flowing behind him like smoke in the wind. There was a quiet strength about him, something that made Mara's chest tighten with both fear and wonder. He nodded once in greeting to the villagers, his eyes scanning the crowd. When they met Mara's gaze, she felt a strange mix of challenge and reassurance, as if he were already testing her, seeing if she could handle the burden of what was coming. The ceremony was simple. No grand music, no flowing gowns or expensive decorations, just two people standing under a holographic arch, light shimmering softly above them. Mara's hand hovered over Kale's as they exchanged words of promise, not for love, but for protection, for duty. When the ceremony was done, Mara stepped back and watched Kale. He didn't smile, not yet, but he nodded to her, and she saw a flicker of something she couldn't name. Respect, perhaps, or understanding. He didn't speak, yet she felt he was telling her that he would honor this union in his own way. As the villagers began to leave, some whispering in awe, Mara stayed behind, walking slowly through the emptying square. Kale followed silently, keeping a careful distance. "Do you always travel alone?" Mara asked finally, breaking the silence. Kale paused before answering. "I usually do," he said softly, "but sometimes I find a reason to stay." Mara looked at him, unsure if she should feel relief or suspicion. "And what reason could that be?" He tilted his head, considering her. "Depends on the people," he said. "Depends on whether they need someone to keep them safe?" Mara's heart tightened. That was exactly why she had married him. Yet she didn't feel the comfort she had expected. Instead, a storm of questions swirled inside her. Who was he, really? How much could he protect them? And what would happen if he ever decided not to stay? That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She sat alone on the balcony of her small hut, staring at the stars. The twin moons of Sindril hung low, casting silver light over the canyon. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she could hear the faint hum of Kale's hoverbike as he patrolled the outskirts of the settlement. The next morning, the people gathered for a routine check of the colony's defenses. Mara walked beside Kale as they inspected the perimeter, noting the makeshift walls and the energy shields the villagers had constructed. Kale moved with an ease that was almost unnatural, his hands brushing over devices and controls, adjusting them without effort. Mara couldn't help but watch, fascinated. "You're very precise," she said, trying to keep her tone neutral. "Do you always know what to do?" Kale shrugged, not looking at her. "I pay attention," he said. "Sometimes that's enough." They reached the edge of the canyon, where the settlement's scouts had reported strange readings. Small mechanical drones hovered just beyond the rocks, scanning the land. Mara felt her pulse quicken. Kale stopped, his dark eyes narrowing. Without touching anything, he raised a hand. The drones slowed, then stopped entirely, as if frozen in midair. Mara gasped, "How?" she whispered. Kale's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. Control, he said. Sometimes you don't need to fight, you just need to guide. Mara stared at the drones, then at Kale. For the first time, she realized that his power wasn't just about strength or speed. It was about understanding, about influence. He didn't destroy things. He redirected them, protected without causing harm. Over the next few days, Mara watched Kale interact with the villagers. Children ran to him without fear.
Machines obeyed his silent commands.
Even the stubborn settlers began to see him not as an outsider, but as a guardian. Mara found herself feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. She had married him for the colony's safety, yet she was beginning to understand that his presence brought more than protection. It brought hope. One evening, Mara found Kale sitting alone by the canyon, watching the sunset. The wind tugged at his coat, and the orange sky reflected in his dark eyes. She approached quietly, unsure what to say. You do this often? She asked. He looked at her and shrugged. Sometimes, he said. It helps me think. Mara hesitated. Do you ever get tired of protecting people who don't know you? Kale smiled faintly. I protect them because someone has to. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it's worth it. Mara sat beside him, feeling the warmth of his presence. For a moment, the weight of her responsibility felt lighter. She realized that Kale wasn't just a tool for survival. He was someone who could inspire her people, someone who could lead without forcing them to follow. The sun disappeared behind the canyon, leaving the sky a deep shade of purple. The twin moons rose, casting gentle light over the settlement. Mara looked at Kale and wondered what the future held. She had married him to save her people, but now she saw that he might be more than a protector. He might be the spark that could unite them all. As night fell, the colony settled into quiet. The hum of machines and the soft murmur of the settlers filled the air. Mara stayed on the balcony looking up at the stars, feeling a cautious hope that they might survive the challenges ahead. And somewhere in the shadows, Kale watched too, ready for whatever would come next. The forced union had begun. But Mara knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test courage, wisdom, and the incredible power of a man she barely knew. The morning sun stretched over the red canyons of Sindril, spilling light into the settlement of Redspire. Mara stood at the edge of the plateau, watching her people move about the colony. Farmers guided robotic plows through dusty fields, children ran along paths lined with glowing markers, and engineers checked the energy shields that protected the settlement. Everything seemed ordinary, yet Mara knew it was not. The corporate warlord who threatened their existence would not wait, and every moment counted. Kale approached quietly, his boots making almost no sound on the rough stone. His hoverbike, parked nearby, hummed faintly, almost like it was alive. Mara turned to him, her heart tightening again. She had seen his calmness before, but today she wanted answers. Kale, she began, how do you always seem so ready? Even when something unexpected happens? He tilted his head slightly, studying her. I watch, he said simply. I listen. I notice things others don't. That is usually enough. Mara frowned. Enough? She asked. Enough for what? Kale's eyes met hers, steady and unshakable. Enough to keep people safe, he replied. They walked together to the outskirts of the colony, where the rocky terrain dropped sharply into canyons. The villagers had reported strange energy readings there, fluctuations that Mara didn't understand. Engineers had tried to measure them, but the results were inconsistent. Mara felt a nervous knot in her stomach. Something was out there. Kale stopped at the edge of the plateau, his gaze sweeping across the canyons below. Mara followed his line of sight and saw nothing unusual, just jagged rocks and dust swirling in the early morning wind. Then she noticed a small drone hovering between the rocks, scanning the area. It moved with unnatural precision, its sensors glowing faintly. Mara instinctively stepped back. Kale didn't move. He raised a hand, palm open, and the drone stopped instantly, frozen midair. The whirring of its motors fell silent. Mara gasped. How? She whispered, unable to hide her amazement. Kale glanced at her, his expression calm. I guide, he said. Sometimes the safest way to protect is to control, not to fight. Mara blinked, trying to understand. She had expected him to confront danger with strength or speed, but this was something different. It was quiet, precise, almost gentle. Over the next few hours, Kale led Mara along the canyon edges, showing her how to read the land, the air, and even the hum of machines. Every movement, every flicker of light held information if one knew how to notice it. Mara felt herself learning something she had never imagined. "You see the wind?" Kale asked at one point, pointing to a swirl of dust. "It tells you the direction of movement. The machines, the sensors, they react to it. If you understand it, you can guide them without touching them." Mara nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "So, you don't fight? You just influence?" Kale smiled faintly. "Influence is stronger than force," he said. "Force can hurt. Influence can protect." By midday, Mara felt a mixture of awe and unease. She had married him to save her people, but she had never expected to see this side of him. Kale's abilities were incredible, yet they were used for safety, not harm. He didn't need to strike or destroy. He could simply redirect, protect, and guide. As they returned to the colony, Mara noticed the children following them. Kale knelt to greet them, and the kids crowded around him without fear. He adjusted the settings on a small hovering toy for one of them, and it floated perfectly in the air, responding to the child's commands. Mara felt her chest tighten. The man she had married to save her people was teaching them to grow in safety, not in fear. That evening, Mara convened a council meeting. The elders, engineers, and farmers all gathered to discuss the colony's defenses. Mara found herself speaking differently than she had before. "Kale has shown me a way to protect our people without using violence," she said. "He can guide machines, adjust energy shields, and help us anticipate threats before they happen." The council members exchanged uncertain glances. One elder, a tall man named Joran, raised his hand. "But can he do it forever? Can he really keep us safe if the warlord comes?" Mara looked at Kale. He gave no grand speech or promise. He simply nodded. "I can show your people how to protect themselves too," he said. "Safety is not just one person. It is everyone working together." The room grew quiet. Mara realized that his approach wasn't just about him. It was about creating strength in others. He could defend the colony, yes, but more importantly, he could teach them to defend themselves. Over the next several days, Kale began training the villagers. The children learned to read the energy patterns in their surroundings. The farmers learned how to operate defensive turrets using minimal effort. Engineers discovered how to adjust shields to anticipate natural shifts in the environment. Mara watched it all with growing admiration. One afternoon, while Mara and Kale were walking through the central square, a small alarm rang out. A scout drone had detected movement on the far plateau. Mara's heart raced. She expected a dangerous machine, a threat to the colony. Kale stopped and held out a hand. The drone froze midair. Mara followed his actions carefully, noting how he moved slowly, deliberately, guiding the drone without force. Then he lowered his hand, and the drone slowly floated back toward the edge of the canyon, harmless and still intact. Mara felt a mix of relief and awe. You stopped it without hurting it," she said. Kale nodded. "Every threat can be handled without destruction. You just have to understand it." As they walked back, Mara realized she was learning more than just survival techniques. She was learning a new way to see danger, not as something to fight, but as something to manage, guide, and overcome. That night, Mara sat on the balcony again, watching the twin moons rise. Kale joined her silently, leaning against the railing. They watched the settlement below, quiet and safe. "You've changed how I see things," Mara said softly. "I thought protecting people meant fighting, or preparing for the worst. But you make it feel possible to keep everyone safe without fear." Kyle looked at her, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Fear is always there," he said, "but courage is noticing it and acting anyway. Protection isn't about stopping danger, it's about guiding it." Mara smiled faintly, feeling a warmth she hadn't expected. The man she had married to save her people was teaching her a new kind of strength, quiet, steady, and extraordinary. Over the next week, the colony began to thrive. Energy shields hummed softly over the rooftops. Children played freely among the streets, and the farmers worked efficiently with Kale's guidance. Mara watched, feeling a mix of pride and wonder. She had married him for duty, yet she realized that his presence brought something deeper: hope, unity, and trust. Late one evening, Mara found Kale at the edge of the canyon, looking out at the stars. "Do you ever leave?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "Not while people need help. But I always move on eventually. That is who I am." Mara nodded slowly, understanding the truth of his words. He was a wanderer, a protector, a guide. And yet, for now, he was theirs. As the moons shone over Red Spire, Mara felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in months. The forced union that had once felt like a burden now seemed like a lifeline. Kale's guidance, his extraordinary abilities, and his quiet wisdom were changing everything. Mara realized that the first test of their partnership had already begun, and both of them were learning, growing, and preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead. The sun rose over the canyons the next day, casting long shadows over the settlement. Mara knew the real threats had not yet arrived, but for the first time she felt ready. With Kale at her side, she could face what was coming, not with fear, but with courage, knowledge, and the quiet, incredible power that he brought to their world. The colony had survived its first trial, and Mara knew the lessons she had learned would carry them forward. She had married him to save her people, but she had discovered something more, a partnership built on trust, wisdom, and the promise of protection that did not rely on harm. And somewhere deep in the canyons, Mara could feel the hum of Kale's energy, steady, calm, and ready for whatever came next. The morning on Sindral was quiet, almost peaceful, but Mara knew better than to trust the calm. The twin moons were hidden behind a haze of red dust, and the canyon winds whispered across the settlement of Redspire. Scouts had spotted movement on the far plateau. Mara's stomach twisted in worry. The corporate warlord was coming not with words, but with machines designed to claim the colony by force. Kale stood at the edge of the central square, his dark coat flowing lightly in the wind. His eyes scanned the horizon with calm precision, reading every glimmer of metal, every flicker of light. Mara watched him, amazed at how steady he remained, while the settlement's people scrambled to secure defenses. "We need to protect everyone," Mara said, her voice tight. "The scouts say the warlord is bringing drones and robotic walkers. This could destroy our energy shields if we aren't careful." Kale nodded slowly. "Then we will guide them instead of fighting. Focus on keeping people safe, not on destroying what comes." Mara swallowed. She had seen him redirect drones before, but this would be different. This was a large-scale attack, and the colony's very survival depended on Kale's abilities. The first warning came as a faint vibration underfoot, followed by the hum of engines in the distance. Mara squinted toward the plateau and saw the warlord's fleet descending. Hovering drones moved like flocks of metallic birds, while walkers trailed behind, their legs clanking against the rock. The villagers gasped, fear spreading like wildfire. Kale raised a hand, palm outward. The nearest drones slowed in midair, hovering as though frozen. Mara held her breath, watching him work. He didn't strike or shoot, he simply moved with deliberate gestures, guiding the drones' energy fields to redirect them safely away from the colony's outer walls. Mara ran to the central energy shield console. "Kale, there are too many. Can you stop them all?" He didn't look at her. His hands moved gracefully, tracing shapes in the air. The drones shimmered, slowed, and floated away from the settlement. Even the walkers, massive and threatening, were guided around the colony, their heavy feet shifting in ways that avoided damage to buildings. Mara felt a mix of awe and relief. The people were watching too, their fear slowly turning into wonder. Kale's power wasn't destructive. It was protective, precise, and careful. He could defend the colony without hurting a single machine or person. Yet the test was far from over. The warlord sent smaller, faster drones that darted around the edges of the plateau, trying to probe the shields. Mara knew the colony couldn't withstand direct contact with them. She looked at Kale, who was moving faster now, guiding and redirecting drones with seemingly effortless control. "How do you do that?" Mara whispered to herself, eyes wide. Kale didn't answer. His attention was entirely on the task. His dark eyes followed the currents of energy around each drone. With a flick of his fingers, one drone tilted away and floated harmlessly into a canyon. Another hovered near a shield tower, then drifted gently into the sky. Mara realized that Kale could almost read the machines, predict their movements, and direct them without conflict. The villagers began to trust him instinctively. Children ran to safer areas as Kale moved along the streets, guiding them with small gestures, while adults manned consoles under his silent direction. Mara could feel the calm spreading among the people. Fear was still there, but Kale's presence transformed it into focused action. Hours passed like minutes. The warlord's fleet made multiple passes, each one more calculated than the last. Mara watched Kale respond with grace, his movements almost dancing as if the wind itself obeyed his command. Drones that seemed impossible to control floated harmlessly above the canyon edges. Walkers turned away from critical structures. Energy fields shimmered, bending around the colony without breaking. During the brief pause, Mara ran to Kale. "You're incredible," she said, her voice trembling. "You've stopped them without hurting anyone. How is that even possible?" Kale glanced at her. calm but with a hint of seriousness. "It isn't magic. It's understanding. Machines, energy, even the wind, they all respond to patterns. Once you know how to guide them, the world follows. Protection doesn't need destruction." Mara's heart pounded. She had always thought strength came from power over others, from fighting or striking. Kale was showing her another way. Strength through guidance, protection, and knowledge. The warlord's fleet began to retreat slightly, perhaps realizing that Red Spire could not be destroyed easily. Mara could see the tension in the remaining drones. They moved more carefully, responding to Kale's invisible influence. The villagers cheered quietly from behind the shields, their eyes full of admiration and hope. Kale didn't celebrate. He moved through the colony, checking defenses, guiding children and farmers, and ensuring that every shield tower and energy field was in perfect alignment. Mara followed him, feeling a deep sense of trust forming between them. She had married him out of necessity, but now she saw the depth of his commitment, not just to her, but to every single person in the colony. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in gold and purple, the warlord's fleet disappeared over the horizon. Mara let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. The colony had survived its first real test, not because of weapons or violence, but because of Kale's incredible ability to guide, protect, and inspire. The villagers emerged cautiously, their fear replaced with awe. Mara watched as Kale walked among them, helping a child climb safely from a balcony, guiding an engineer to adjust a shield, and silently signaling the farmers to check their fields. He was everywhere at once, and yet he moved with calm and ease. Mara finally approached him. You saved everyone," she said softly, "not by fighting, not by destroying, but by guiding them, by showing them the way." Kale looked at her, his expression quiet and thoughtful. "Everyone has a role," he said. "I only guide. You lead. Together you protect. Strength isn't in one person. It's in everyone learning how to stand together." Mara nodded slowly, feeling a new kind of respect for him. She had married him to save her people, but she had discovered something more. Kale's power was extraordinary, yes, but it wasn't about heroics or fame. It was about care, understanding, and patience. That kind of power could last longer than any weapon. That night, Mara and Kale walked to the canyon edge. The twin moons shone softly, reflecting off the jagged rocks below. The settlement was quiet, peaceful for the first time in days. Mara could feel the energy of the land, the hum of the shields, and the quiet presence of Kale beside her. "You've changed everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just the colony, but me." Kale glanced at her. "Change is part of learning," he said. "Fear teaches caution, danger teaches wisdom. You've already learned much." "I am just helping you see it." Mara smiled faintly, feeling the weight of her responsibility lift slightly. She had expected a protector who would fight for them, but Kale had shown her something better, a way to survive without fear, to defend without harm, and to lead with courage. As the night deepened, Mara realized that the real battles were not just against machines or enemies. They were against doubt, fear, and misunderstanding. Kale's incredible power had faced the first test, and passed, not with destruction, but with guidance. She had married him to save her people, but now she understood that he had also saved her, not from enemies, but from her own worries, doubts, and fear. Together they were learning the true meaning of protection, leadership, and partnership. The stars shone brightly above the canyons, and Mara felt a sense of calm she hadn't known before. Kale's presence was steady, comforting, and powerful in a way that was not violent, but transformative. The colony was safe for now, but Mara knew the warlord would return. She also knew that with Kale's guidance, they could face whatever came next, not with fear, but with courage, understanding, and the quiet, incredible power that had already changed everything. And somewhere in the canyons, the hum of Kale's energy lingered, a promise of protection, wisdom, and the adventures yet to come. The morning sun rose over Red Spire, casting golden light on the dusty paths and neon-tipped rooftops. The colony was quiet, peaceful, and alive with energy. Mara walked through the streets, observing her people. Children played in the open courtyards, laughing freely. Farmers tended to their crops, which now seemed healthier than ever. Engineers adjusted the energy shields with confident hands. It was a morning unlike any other. They had survived, they had grown stronger, and Mara felt a sense of pride that filled her chest. Kale was already at the edge of the plateau, standing on his hoverbike. He watched the settlement below, calm and focused. Mara approached him, feeling the familiar mix of awe and curiosity she had carried since their first meeting. "You're up early," she said softly. Kale turned his head and gave her a faint smile. "The colony doesn't sleep," he said. "And neither do I, when there is work to do." Mara nodded, thinking of the past days. Kale had guided the drones, redirected the walkers, trained the villagers, and calmed the children. Yet, despite all that, he never showed arrogance. He never demanded praise. His strength was quiet, steady, and full of purpose. "We've survived," Mara said, "and it's because of you. She hesitated. "I wanted you to stay just for the colony, but I think I want you to stay because of you." Kale's dark eyes met hers. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he dismounted his hoverbike, standing before her with the same calm authority he always carried. "I do not stay for me," he said. "I stay because people can learn to protect themselves. And because you have already shown that you can lead." Mara felt a warmth in her chest. It wasn't love in the way fairy tales spoke of, but something deeper. Respect, trust, partnership. She had married him to save her people, but now she realized she had gained much more. A companion who shared her responsibility, her hope, and her vision. That afternoon, Kale began training a group of young settlers in the ways of guidance and protection. He showed them how to read energy flows, how to anticipate machines' movements, and how to work together as a team. Mara watched from a distance, amazed at how quickly the children picked up his lessons. "He teaches them without fear," she said to Joran the Elder. "He shows them strength without violence." "I've never seen anything like it." Joran nodded slowly. "It is rare. Most warriors rely on force. Kale, he relies on understanding." Mara felt a sense of peace she had never experienced before. The colony had been through danger, uncertainty, and fear, yet here they were, stronger, smarter, and more united than ever. As evening approached, a soft wind swept through the canyons, carrying the scent of distant flowers and warm dust. Mara found Kale at the plateau's edge again. He was staring at the horizon, thoughtful as always. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Mara asked. Kale shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "I leave only when the people no longer need me. And for now, Red Spire still has much to learn. I will guide them until they can protect themselves completely." Mara smiled. "I'm glad," she said. "Not just for the colony, but for me." Kale's expression softened. "Partnership is a choice," he said. "I choose to stay. But only if you continue to lead alongside me." Mara nodded, feeling the weight of her role and the comfort of his guidance. Together they walked back to the settlement, ready to face the future as equals. The next day brought a small celebration. The villagers gathered in the central square, decorating it with colorful lights and banners. There was music, laughter, and a sense of joy that Mara had never seen in Red Spire before. Children ran freely among the crowd, and adults shared stories of the past week, of fear faced and challenges overcome. Kale moved quietly among them, helping where needed, teaching, guiding, and protecting. He was the invisible hand that kept the day smooth, ensuring that everyone could enjoy themselves safely. Mara watched him, her heart full. She had married him to save her people, but now she realized that his presence had saved her too, from doubt, from fear, and from believing that protection required destruction. As the sun set behind the canyons, Mara and Kale stood together on the balcony of the council hall. The twin moons rose over the plateau, casting silver light over the rooftops. Mara leaned against him, feeling the steady strength of his presence. "You've changed the colony," she said softly. "And me. I never thought I could see strength like this, without fear or harm." Kale's dark eyes reflected the moon's. "Strength is not in fighting," he said. "It is in teaching, guiding, and protecting. Courage comes from knowing you can act without harming others." Mara nodded. She had learned this lesson firsthand. Her people had survived not because of weapons or brute force, but because of patience, knowledge, and the quiet, incredible power of Kale's guidance. Over the next few weeks, the colony flourished. Engineers discovered new ways to enhance the energy shields, inspired by Kale's methods. Farmers optimized their fields, using subtle energy currents to protect crops. Children learned to read environmental signals, becoming alert and capable of anticipating danger without panic. Mara led the council with renewed confidence, always guided by Kale's steady presence beside her. One evening, Mara found Kale at the edge of the canyon again. He was watching the horizon, quiet as the stars appeared above. She walked to him and placed a hand on his arm. "You could leave at any time," she said. "But you stay. Why?" Kale looked at her, his expression calm and serious. "Because someone must guide those who cannot yet protect themselves," he said. and because you have shown me the value of partnership. I am stronger here with you than I would be alone." Mara felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of hope she had never known before. She had married him to save her people, but she realized now that they were both learning and growing together. Their bond was not born of necessity alone, it was built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. The days that followed were filled with quiet joy and steady progress. The colony worked together under Kale's guidance, learning to anticipate threats, manage machines, and protect one another. Mara led with wisdom and compassion, inspired by Kale's calm confidence and incredible abilities. One night, as the twin moons shone brightly over the plateau, Mara and Kale stood on the balcony together, looking out over the colony. The wind swept across the canyons, carrying the scent of dust, flowers, and hope. Mara felt a sense of peace, unlike any she had known before. "You've saved more than the colony," she said softly. "You've saved me, too." Kale looked at her, his expression quiet but full of understanding. "We save each other," he said, "through trust, guidance, and courage. That is the greatest power there is." Mara smiled, leaning slightly against him. For the first time since the threat of the warlord had emerged, she felt truly safe, not because of machines, shields, or weapons, but because of knowledge, care, and partnership. She had married Kale to protect her people, and now she saw that he was not just a guardian, but a teacher, a guide, and a companion for the journey ahead. As the colony slept peacefully beneath the twin moons, Mara realized that this was only the beginning. Together, she and Kale would continue to face challenges, guide their people, and protect Red Spire, not through force or fear, but through understanding, courage, and the quiet, incredible power of a partnership built on trust. The stars above Sindril twinkled like distant sparks of promise. Mara and Kale stood side by side, ready to meet whatever the future held, knowing that the true strength of a colony, a people, and a partnership lay not in fighting, but in protecting, guiding, and believing in one another. And in that moment, Mara knew that Kale would stay, not because he had to, but because together they had created something stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, and stronger than any threat: hope. The plateau was calm. The colony was safe, and the wanderer who had once been a stranger now stood firmly at the heart of Red Spire, not as a hero who fought, but as a guide who led, inspired, and protected. The future was uncertain, but Mara and Kale faced it together, ready for every adventure, every challenge, and every moment of growth that lay ahead.